on the Locked On Big Ten Game Day Live show. I am Ben Stevens, the host of Locked On Big Ten, joined by my dear friend George Balecki, a sports anchor and reporter in Madison, Wisconsin, where the vibes are high today. But George, the vibes are high here too as well, because I don't know if you know this, but we have a live studio audience for the first ever Locked On Big Ten Game Day Live.
Woo! Let's go, Big Ten!
Put it up.
Woo! That is something that the famed College Game Day in Minneapolis today, before the Little Brown Jug, cannot say. Fox Big Noon Kickoff cannot say they have a live studio audience, nor can the great BTN Tailgate. But here on the Locked On Big Ten Game Day Live show, we do. Those are my roommates. So we are here. We are excited for the first Saturday of Big Ten football. 6 games to get you ready for. George and I will do that all along. But before we dive into the specific matchups for this Saturday slate, let's take a look at some overall storylines, George, that we're paying attention to as we really get into the full thick of it of this Big Ten season.
That's right, Ben. And I think when you go across, for me, what I'm most excited about is the overall strategy that the Big Ten's coming in with. 8 games, 8 weeks, culminated on December 19th by a championship Saturday in the conference, but zero wiggle room for the conference if any games have to get canceled, if any COVID numbers spike on rosters, and even including coaching staff as well. Those games will be deemed no contest, not a forfeit, not a loss, a no contest. We've seen games be canceled, some postponed across the nation. But for the Big Ten, it's a full conference slate. And for them, they're not letting any chance go. 8 games, 8 weeks. And that's the big picture. For me, the smaller picture and who I'm excited to see, and it's year 2 under his offensive playbook, year 2 in the system that he's in, Justin Fields, arguably the best returning, out of the only returning Heisman finalist from last year, but arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And here's my thing with Justin Fields. He's seen what Trevor Lawrence has done the past few weeks when he's been playing. He's seen all the praise he's get. Well, that man has just been sitting out in the woods in Columbus is how I picture him, just like an old angry blacksmith, sharpening his tool and just getting ready for this season, throwing balls, practicing his accuracy in the woods. But seriously, he is more focused, more motivated than ever. And he is one of the most impressive stat lines returning from last year. And he certainly can be one of the best quarterbacks going into this draft, because also Trey Lance has played one more game than him. And a lot of people have Trey Lance jumping him on their big boards heading to the NFL draft. This is a big year for Justin Fields in Ohio State. They won a national championship. Justin Fields wants to be into that conversation as one of the top quarterbacks picked in the upcoming NFL draft. Those are the 2 things I'm looking forward to. 8 games, 8 weeks, culminated on December 19th, and Justin Fields year 2.
When you describe that scene of Justin Fields sharpening the iron in Columbus, Ohio, it reminds me of the scene from Rocky IV, the training scene where you had the pretty boy, Ivan Drago, in Russia, in the labs, getting shot up with whatever. Trevor Lawrence, kind of a pretty boy, very talented, but kind of a pretty boy with that long hair. Our Big Ten hopeful, Justin Fields, as we look at that Heisman race, just grinding away in the Midwest portion of this great country in Columbus, Ohio, getting ready for the season. You talk about historic for Justin Fields. Last year, the first ever season in Big Ten conference history where a quarterback threw for 40 touchdowns and also ran for 10 touchdowns. The first ever quarterback to do that. And I think, oddly, he's going to be even better this year. A moment before we dive into some more storylines and as we look at today's matchups, to remind you guys, if you want to get involved in this conversation, send something in the chat, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Twitch, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook. We will see it. We can add it. We can see your question live on our screen. We should have some fun, engage in this Big Ten community as it is the first weekend of Big Ten football. George, you talk about the known commodities we have with Justin Fields for this upcoming season. One of the things I'm keying on is some of the unknowns that we have out of quarterback play. We saw that last night in Madison, Wisconsin with Graham Mertz. That was an unknown going in. Now he seems like he could rival Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence for that Heisman Trophy. But as we look at today, yes, big words, but we'll talk about that stat line in just a little bit.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm just getting fired up. It's Big Ten football. But when we look at the quarterbacks we have today, some unknowns that could take some huge leaps this year. You look at the Little Brown Jug. We have a known on one side, Tanner Morgan in Minnesota. But on the other, Joe Milton making his first career start for Michigan. A lot of hype surrounding him. The big frame, 6'5", 240, has a rocket of a right arm and can use his legs as well to extend plays. Also in the Big Ten East, Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback for Indiana. Can the Hoosiers take that next step? I am the president and founder of the Michael Penix Jr. for Heisman Fan Club. I just need to put my allegiances on the line right there. But I expect big things from Michael Penix Jr. this year. A near perfect passer rating in the 6 starts he made last season in 2019 before injury. But George, we have 8 quarterbacks across all 14 schools in the Big Ten Conference that have less than 8 starts to their name. So we have some new faces that we're not so much accustomed to for this season. We have a first comment as well from Gus Whitaker saying, row the boat. He's getting ready for that little brown jug tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, the primetime game on ABC. That is where College Game Day is. And we are here on the Locked On Big Ten Game Day Live, getting you set for everything you need to know for this opening Saturday of Big Ten football. So, George, we're talking about the known commodities and some of the unknown commodities at the quarterback play this year. Like we said, we know one good thing, and that is Justin Fields will be leading the Ohio State Buckeyes with high hopes this year in 2020. It's part of the reason we're playing a Big Ten season is because Ohio State has a goal of reaching that national championship and putting on for this great conference as a representative of it. Let's take a look at the Buckeyes now. In your mind, is it college football playoff berth or bust for the Ohio State Buckeyes this season?
That's every year. No matter who's at quarterback, no matter who they lose on defense, and they lost 4 studs last year, 3 of those in their secondary, no matter who's at receiver, because they lost studs at that position as well. Ohio State, I love talking about it in Big Ten circles because when you talk about competing with Ohio State, you talk about the pedigree that they now have. That's an SEC type caliber team that resides in the upper Midwest. Right. Every year, regardless of the scenario, regardless how many games you have to play, and when the season ends, compared to when the selection committee for the college football playoff meets, it's college football playoff or bust for Ohio State. It's national championship or bust for Ohio State. And that's the talk now that Madison, Wisconsin is trying to join in because they're saying Big Ten West title, Big Ten championship, college football playoff. They're trying to get up to Ohio State. To get there, they have to pass Michigan. They have to pass Penn State, which I think they're there on the brink of doing. They're also there to lead the Big Ten West. But for Ohio State, focusing on them, that's what it is. That's the expectations that they have set, and they continue to live up to. What I love, we've talked about the offense. I do want to touch on the defense. Lose Jeff Okudah, arguably the best corner in football. Damon Arnett, another stud corner. Jordan Fuller, who's a starter for the Los Angeles Rams. And the best defensive player in college football last year in Chase Young. They reload with Shaun Wade. They have Josh Proctor at safety, who's a junior out of Owasso, Oklahoma. One of the best high school programs in the country. Was the number 7 ranked safety coming out of high school. Cam Brown Jr. at corner. And Sevyn Banks, who's an Under Armour All-American. That filled those roles. And then Zach Harrison at defensive end for the Buckeyes. He is no Chase Young. We may never see another Chase Young in college football. But Zach Harrison, 6'6" frame, 265 pounds, looks more like a pure pass rusher than a pass rusher and a run stopper for the Buckeyes. But that's who they get on defense. And I'm really excited to see those Buckeyes defense take on a very skilled Adrian Martinez and experienced Adrian Martinez in the passing game, along with all the receivers and weapons he has.
Something that Ohio State fans can set their excitement to this year. Chase Young in his first year on campus in Columbus, in his first playing experience for the Buckeyes, 3.5 sacks. Zach Harrison, 3.5 sacks last year in his first year on campus in Columbus. The comparison is high. Those are lofty expectations, but Zach Harrison has the talent to be another magnificent edge rusher in Columbus, Ohio. Also, their linebacking core this year, Pete Werner, who is a Butkus Award watch list already in the season, Baron Browning. They bring some experience back, and I don't even know if you mentioned him. I might have missed it. Shaun Wade obviously opted back in for that Buckeyes defense, one of the best secondaries in all of college football. Ohio State making a claim to call themselves DBU. As we look at the college football playoff, ESPN's Football Power Index has Ohio State making that CFP at a 69% chance. That is 3rd in the country, behind Clemson and behind Alabama. As we see Ohio State play more this season, I think that percentage might go up and up and up. It is only 8 games, but they are focused. George, we have to take a moment here and talk about the video that Ohio State released, their game day trailer on Thursday afternoon. Did you see it? Did you get chills? It was one of the best crafted hype videos I've ever seen in my life. 2.5 minutes that are worth an Oscar, in my opinion.
I had to take that moment and inhale and exhale to get rid of the chills. Ohio State, they're setting the standard. We saw what LSU did last year, breaking out their hype videos. And Ohio State was already doing that. You know, they just weren't getting the national attention, the national love that Joe Burrow and that surrounding. They did a phenomenal job. And I know to bring it up, that quote by Ryan of really making playing in an empty stadium resonate with his players, that they're not playing in an empty stadium in Columbus. And I'm not talking about the cardboard.
Yeah, at the shoe today is where Ohio State opens up the season against Nebraska. It was during a practice during this training camp where Ryan Day brought his team together at the end and issued a quote that I think is one of the best and gives me chills, and I'm going to probably start crying as I say it. He says, while there may not be bodies in the stands, their spirits are with you. And it's like, oh my God, that is why we play Big Ten football. That is what we love to do. And that is why we are pre-gaming it all here on the Locked On Big Ten Game Day live show. So that is Ohio State, who has been to 3 of the 6 total college football playoffs. Obviously, last year, a stinging loss to Clemson. Not how they wanted to end the year. I think they have revenge on their mind this year. It is national championship or bust in Columbus, Ohio for the Buckeyes in 2020. Ohio State opens the season hosting Nebraska. Now let's take a moment, George, and talk about what the Huskers return in year 3 of the Scott Frost era. The prodigal son from Wood River, Nebraska, back to lead the Huskers to where they used to be when Scott Frost was the quarterback in 1997, winning their last national championship. What do you make of what Nebraska brings to the table for the 2020 season?
Well, I mean, they bring experience at the quarterback position, which is invaluable, especially in this conference, but across all of college football. It doesn't matter if you want to pride yourself with running the ball. It doesn't matter how good your defense is. If you don't have a guy that could sling it and is somewhat athletic, then you're not going to win games. And Adrian Martinez is that. Can he stay healthy for the Cornhuskers? Can Adrian Martinez take that next step in his game for the Cornhuskers? Behind him, Dedrick Mills in the backfield. I saw him gash that stout, amazing Wisconsin defense last year for 188 yards, 11 yards a carry in that game. And on the outside, and this is a guy that honestly, you'll see him line up in the backfield as well, Wan'Dale Robinson, small guy, but fast as get out. Scott Frost got creative with getting him the ball in his hands as a freshman. 743 all-purpose yards, 5 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 3 receiving, and he's a chain mover too. Anytime he touches the ball, 11 yards per touch. And on the outside, he brings in Omar Manning from junior college, 6'4", 225. He can move, average 20.7 yards per reception in junior college. And he wasn't playing the school of the blind. Kilgore JUCO, Blinn, NEO A&M, Navarro, Tyler College. I covered NEO A&M when I was in Missouri. And that is some of the top junior college football you'll come across. And to finish out and round out his receiving corps, Cade Warner, son of Kurt Warner at wide receiver. He's not going to be the most athletic guy, but he's that classic high IQ football player on the outside.
There it is. There it is.
Literally, when Nebraska was waiting around for the college football season to start, though, Cade Warner would be with his teammates, break out a whiteboard and go over what they're watching on TV, whether at the NFL level or college level. And it's invaluable to have those coaches on the field. So they have the talent, they have the athleticism, and then they blend it in with the smarts as well. And Scott Frost in year 3, hey, I'll say this right now for Nebraska. You were the school that was hooting and hollering to play. You are the school that sells out every single game. You are the program that constantly demands respect and says you are back. This is year 3 under the prodigal son. This is year 3 under a guy that took UCF from the ashes to a wrongfully hanged national championship banner, but nonetheless an undefeated season. You asked to play college football. You got it. Congrats, you get Ohio State. But that aside, all the jokes we want to make about the terrible pull that they got in the schedule, you wanted to play show us. This is year 3. You get your recruits. You have your culture there now. It's time for Nebraska to show up. It really is.
Scott Frost, 9-15 overall in his first 2 seasons in Lincoln, 6-12 against Big Ten competition. And just one thing to highlight, Adrian Martinez, who came on and electrified Big Ten football in his freshman year in 2018, 2,617 pass yards, 17 touchdowns through the air, 629 additionally on the ground with 8 touchdowns rushing as well. Took a step back in 2019, though, less than 2,000 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions. Didn't do as much with his legs as well. Luke McCaffrey, younger brother of Christian, came on and excited some of Nebraska's fans last year. They were in a quarterback competition throughout most of this training camp, which was unbeknownst to a lot of people that thought, oh, this is Adrian Martinez's team. It is. He has been named the starter for the opener against Ohio State. But keep an eye. If he starts to struggle a little bit, Luke McCaffrey might get some playing time for Scott Frost and the Huskers this season. So let's move on as we keep working through this Big Ten slate. 15 minutes now, George, until we kick off with 2 games, Ohio State and Nebraska at noon, and also Michigan State and Rutgers. But let's move to the end of the day, the primetime game, the Little Brown Jug, the 104th meeting all time between Michigan and Minnesota. Give me something you're looking forward to in this game. Seems that we have some technical difficulties with George. This is what happens when you stream through the interwebs. One man. Are we back? Oh, George, we lost you there for a moment. We got you? George is having some Wi-Fi issues. We're not hearing you as loud and clear, but now you seem like you're coming back a little bit. There's that beautiful punum I'm used to seeing. Bring it back in. What were you saying about the little brown jug?
Well, what I'm looking forward to for Tanner Morgan and Rashad Bateman, this is year 3 in Minnesota for Morgan, but this is a first year without Kirk Shiraka, who's now at Penn State. So were you a product of Shiraka's system? Does PJ Fleck go away from that? I don't believe he will. He's an offensive mind in the background. He's an offensive guy through and through, but I'm excited to see Tanner Morgan make the jump. In this game overall, give me the line of scrimmage, and no one likes to see a battle better than that. But Minnesota returns all 5 of their offensive line starters, while Michigan has Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson, who could be one of the best D-line duos in the country. And you touched on him before, Joe Milton. I've heard all the hype coming out about him as a leader. He has comparisons at his size to Cam Newton, his comparisons to all the big quarterbacks. But as a leader, what this guy is heralded to be. And everyone's saying, well, let him write his own story. I'm sorry. This is Michigan football. This is one of the highest pedigree conferences, one of the highest pedigree programs, and one of the top conferences in the country. You don't have that luxury anymore, buddy. You're on the big stage. You're going to play in the big house throughout this year. Not tonight. You'll be playing in Minneapolis, but regardless, I'm excited to see Joe Milton take the field, especially the lost a few receivers and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was one of the best athletes on the outside last year. Give me Joe Milton. Give me Tanner Morgan. Give me the Minnesota offensive line. Give me Michigan's defensive line in this game. And to me, on paper, this is one of the best matchups we'll have outside of Clemson and Notre Dame in the ACC when it comes to ranked teams on the road as well.
Our good friend Asher Lowe coming in and chiming in on the Little Brown Jug. Minnesota plus 140. Take my money. We also have a question from Luke Lamble saying Minnesota still has one of 2 good wide receivers. Yeah? Yes. Rashad Bateman has opted back in. And also look out for Chris Ottman-Bell, his counterpart on the other side. And then our good friend Matt Betts saying, go Terps. We will talk about Maryland and Northwestern in just a little bit. Michigan has won 41 of the last 45 Little Brown Jugs dating back to 1968. The last time we played this game in 2017, Michigan victorious. Minnesota's last win, 2014. PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers looking to reverse that trend tonight in Minneapolis, TCF Bank Stadium, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. So, George, quickly, I don't think we need to spend too much time on the Wisconsin recap because the Badgers were so dominant last night in their season opening win over the Illini, 45-7. It's Graham Mertz time, 20 of 21, 248 yards, 5 TDs. George is drinking his coffee out of his Wisconsin State mason jar mug. That is how good things are. That is what the vibe is like in Madison. Any closing thoughts, George, on last night's opener with Wisconsin, a dominant 45-7 win?
If you threw on that game a rock for the past year, you did not know who Graham Mertz was, you think that was a redshirt junior, not a freshman. He had confidence. He threw sideline to sideline. And even in that Rushman beat us, but he did. And most of all, lead is 17 passes of the game. 17, first of the game. Not he got him for those 3 of his 5 touchdowns he had to do. I'm excited to see him go against a Northwestern defense, Michigan defense. Games come. But sell me on the confidence of this kid, how easy he made it look, and that's what I loved about yesterday. And the defense as well held Illinois to 218 yards and 8 first downs. They lost a lot to the NFL last season in the draft, but they returned a heck of a lot. If Jim Leonard was an offensive coordinator, he'd be a head coach already. One of the best defensive coordinators, the best, I'll say, in the country.
George's Wisconsin expertise is at that level. He said it perfectly there. George, we're going to make a little change up to our rundown right now. We have our man, Kevin McGuire, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, in the waiting room. Let's bring him in for some insight on a huge Big Ten East matchup between Penn State and Indiana today. The 8th ranked Nittany Lions. If I can get to the graphics here and figure this out. There we go. Is it there? There it is. And let me get rid of this caption covering Kevin's beautiful face. We're all here right now, Nittany Lions and the Hoosiers. Kevin, great to have you here as the first ever guest on the Locked On Big Ten Game Day live show. Let's dive into that matchup between the Hoosiers and the Nittany Lions. Give us something you're looking out for matchup-wise, X's and O's, in this scheme of how it plays out tonight.
Well, I don't think I need to tell you how important Indiana's hopes will be relying on quarterback Michael Penix. And I think that that's going to be one of the big keys, because I look at this matchup and yeah, I think that Penn State has a really good team coming into the season, even with a couple of the notable players they won't have this year. This is still going to be a pretty good roster for James Franklin. But going on the road in this particular spot scares me a little bit, because this Indiana team is going to be dangerous this year. And it's all going to start with that quarterback. And he's got some good targets to go to as well. So this is a good opening test for Penn State. And I think it's going to be very crucial for the defensive line to establish some kind of presence in the backfield, bring some pressure on Penix and see what he can do. I mean, if this is a game where you're going to force Penix to beat you through the air, it's a dangerous risk, but it's one that I think you have to be willing to take in this matchup particularly.
Do you see Sean Clifford making the jump with Kirk Sherrock and now as the OC, that Tanner Morgan-esque jump from year one under the system to year two? Does Sean Clifford have the talent, the intangibles you need to actually be the next level as a passer? And to me, that's what Penn State has been missing to now become equal with Ohio State.
Yeah, I think so. And that's one of the big things I'm looking forward to this season, because I do think that Sean Clifford has all the tools that will make him successful and help Penn State become successful. To me, it's more about establishing some kind of connection with the wide receivers. And that's the big question mark for Penn State this year. Do they have the wide receivers that will step up? I do have faith that this is going to be a fun offense to watch, though, because I do think that Kirk Sherrock is going to bring some new wrinkles to what is already a pretty good offensive map that they have in store for them. So I'm very curious to see that relationship with the quarterback and the offensive coordinator moving forward. I think there's a lot of promise and potential here, but is it going to take that next step very quickly? I don't know. That's one of the things. This has been such a bizarre offseason for everybody involved. I think especially for teams with new coordinators and new assistant coaches like Penn State has all across the offensive side. So it could be a little bit of a transition. Obviously, jumping into Big Ten play, they don't have a lot of time to let that play out. They need to figure it out right out of the go, because not only do they have a dangerous Indiana team this week, but got a pretty big game next week too. But we'll worry about that next week. Right now, you just got to focus on finding a way to get that offense going early on. Keep that consistently going through for 4 quarters. And that's going to be a big question mark. But I do think that there is potential for Sean Clifford to take another step. Having a year of starting experience, I think, does help. Having a new offensive coordinator, it's a big mystery in the question going in right now.
One of those weapons on the offensive side for Sean Clifford is Pat Freiermuth, probably the best tight end in the Big Ten Conference, maybe in the entire country. So, Kevin, let's get right to it. Is Penn State on upset alert today? What do you see in this game prediction?
I think you have to put Penn State on upset alert because, like I said, this Indiana team is not to be overlooked. Coming off a very successful year last year, a lot of potential and optimistic viewpoints for this upcoming season. This Indiana team could very well get somebody on their schedule that you're not suspecting. I don't think they beat Ohio State. I don't think they beat Penn State, but I think this is one of those games where Penn State could very well be trailing at halftime. And then you look to see what kind of adjustments are made in the second half. Maybe that depth and talent does provide Penn State a path to not only winning the game, but maybe even covering as they go along. It was very interesting to me to see the spread not move around a whole lot this week. I think it took some people by surprise, not me. I think this is a tough spot for Penn State to open its season. I do think they're going to cover, though, and I think it's going to play out similar to what I just said. I think it could be a slow starting offensive output for Penn State, but I think in the second half, that's where they're going to start establishing themselves a little bit more, certainly up front on the offensive line, and I think that it will pave their way to a double-digit victory today.
So Penn State and Indiana, the 8th-ranked Nittany Lions, going on the road to Bloomington, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Kevin McGuire, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for joining the Locked On Big Ten Game Day live show. We will talk to you very soon, my friend.
All right, sounds good. Sorry I was late, but I was better later than never, and I'm just happy that Big Ten's back.
You were actually early, so we got you in before. But now, Kevin, I'm going to let you go because we are going to bring in a young Andrew Wade, the host of Locked On Hawkeyes, who is decked out in all of his Iowa gear and ready to go.
I got the flag and everything. I got the Stanzi jersey. I got the Hawkeye hoodie, guys. I am freaking
Stanzi jersey.
Yes, Andrew, man. You beautiful SOB. You look great, bro.
Stanzi the Manzi. I appreciate you, George. Yeah, man, I'm freaking pumped. I got 4 TVs lined up. I got an egg bacon. I got Coors Light in the fridge. Dude, guys, I am so jacked up.
Coors
You
Light.
should be.
Let's take a moment because as we are bringing the hype right here, Coors Light is the beer that is literally made to chill. So when we are all done here in about 5 minutes, because we're getting close to kickoff between Nebraska and Ohio State, Michigan State and Rutgers, we will all be sitting back, relaxing, enjoying Big Ten football, celebrating responsibly with Coors Light, the beer made to chill. So let's get into it quickly. Purdue and Iowa. We know that the Boilermakers will not have Rondale Moore. Their head coach, Jeff Brom, also not on the sidelines today due to COVID-19. So what are you looking at in this game between the Hawkeyes and the Boilers to open up the 2020 season?
Yeah, man, I think first and foremost, the fact that Jeff Brom is out is a bigger loss to me than Rondale Moore. People are very concerned about Rondale Moore, but he wasn't the guy who has torched Iowa in the past couple of years. So last year he was out. David Bell still had about 20 catches for 197 yards or something ridiculous like that. The year before that, Rondale Moore was on the Purdue Boilermakers, and he only had a couple catches for about 30, 40 yards. So to me, Jeff Brom being out is a bigger absence from the Purdue standpoint. That being said, I still think this passing attack, as long as Brian Brom is aggressive, as I would expect him to be considering he is Jeff Brom's brother, and I would assume Jeff is kind of in his ear trying to tell him, or at least telling him pregame, like what you should be doing. Right. I expect them still to be coming out, throwing the ball. And now that their starting running back is also out as well, King Doreau, not a good starting running back, 451 yards rushing last year, 3.5 yards per carry. I still expect them to come out slinging the ball all over the place, and I still expect this to be a relatively high-scoring game.
On the other side of the ball, Spencer Petras making his first career start for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Amir Smith-Marset joins him. You have Tyler Goodson in the backfield. Andrew Wade, give us your prediction for the game between the Boilermakers and the Hawkeyes. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, man, I honestly expect Purdue to get out to a lead in the first part of the game. We don't know what to expect from Brian Brom. There's a new secondary. I mean, we lost Michael Ojemudia and Geno Stone last year, so you're kind of bringing in a few new guys. Iowa's going to be tinkering with what their defense is. Traditionally, they want to run a 4-3. We're going to see a dime look a little bit more often than we've probably ever seen Iowa play, but that's a new scheme for Iowa. 2 years ago was huge that they moved to a 4-2-5. Absolutely phenomenal concept for them that they actually went to not having three linebackers on the field in passing situations. So the idea of putting 6 DBs on the field is pretty revolutionary for Phil Parker at this point. So I do expect them to have a little bit of growing pains early on in the game, be down 10-7. Then I expect Iowa to come back in the second half, make some adjustments, and win the game.
I don't know if you saw this from Asher Lowe in the chat, but I'm going to put this up. Hopefully it doesn't cover your face. Wade, you better cover -3. That is Asher Lowe giving you his take on the Iowa-Purdue game. And we heard the great analysis from the host of Locked On Hawkeyes, Andrew Wade. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being decked out. Go enjoy that bacon, egg, and cheese. Go enjoy those Coors Lights. We're getting ready for Big Ten football. Andrew Wade, thank you very much. So, George, we only have about 3 minutes here until we get to the kickoff between Nebraska and Ohio State and Michigan State and Rutgers. I'm messing with the graphics here. Now we are back. I'm going to move Asher's caption as well. So, George, let's get into our game picks because we're coming up on 2 minutes now till kickoff for the first Saturday of Big Ten football. Let's start with one of the later games, one of the nightcaps, Maryland and Northwestern. The Wildcats an 11.5-point favorite, the over-under total 53. Quickly, what do you like in that game?
I love Patty Fisher, Chris Bergen, Blake Gallagher returning at the linebacking core. And I love that Peyton Ramsey transferred in from Indiana. So Northwestern will have an actual quarterback there. New offensive coordinator, Mike Bajakian. He's going to bring an up-tempo, power running type of offense. And Pat Fitzgerald, one of the best coaches that does the most with the least in the nation. I like Northwestern in this one. I want Locks out in Maryland to have success. I do like Mike Loxley, but it's not going to start tonight. Give me Northwestern in this one.
Matt Betts, I hope you hung on to listen to this Terps analysis. Maryland has won 10 straight season openers. I don't think that happens tonight, but I do believe that Maryland covers. I think it's a more defensive game. I don't think the offenses will be rolling just yet. Northwestern's defense is going to be their calling card, especially their linebacking core. Patty Fisher, Blake Gallagher, and Chris Bergen might be the best 3 linebackers to make up one single unit in the entire conference. Maryland covers, Northwestern wins. So let's move on to our next game here, and let's go to that other huge primetime game, the Little Brown Jug, the 104th meeting between Michigan and Minnesota. Michigan has won 8 of the last 9 matchups between these two schools. They are a 3-point favorite tonight on the road, the over-under total 53. George, give it to me.
I'm taking Minnesota in this one. They're at home, tumultuous offseason. It is odd, but PJ Fleck, they're going to row the boat. Don't face forward, face back, and trust me, that's what they're going to have to do with Tanner Morgan, Rashad Bateman, and that offensive line. There's going to be high scoring in this. I'll take the over. I like Joe Milton and his weapons, but give me Minnesota at home because they're at home.
I agree with you. Minnesota at home, sprinkle on the money line, and I like the call of a high-scoring game. I would lean the over as well. Can Tanner Morgan and an outstanding receiver, Rashad Bateman, take advantage of a young, inexperienced Michigan secondary? If those big boys up front, like Daniel Faalele, the 400-pounder right tackle for Minnesota, can hold his ground today against an outstanding Michigan defensive line and Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye, they should have some time to throw the ball down the field, and Rashad Bateman should be on the receiving end. We have hit noon, so let's roll through it. Iowa, Purdue. Iowa, 3.5-point favorite. I'm taking the Hawkeyes. No Rondale Moore, no Jeff Brom for Purdue. I think this is going to be an Iowa team that has a better offense than normal. I'm taking the Hawkeyes minus 3.5. George?
I trust Brian Braun, but once you get past scripted plays, you know what can happen. And you lost your best weapon to Rondale Moore this week. George Karlaftis. I'm excited to see him go against Purdue, but give me Iowa, and I'll take the under in this one. Give me the under.
The other afternoon slotted game, as we talked about with Locked On Nittany Lions, Kevin McGuire, is Penn State and Indiana. The Nittany Lions, a 6-point favorite, the over-under total 62. Can the Hoosiers pull off the upset, George?
Go man on man, 11 on 11. They still are the more skilled team. Normal year, I'd say they might be looking ahead to Ohio's tension opening season and finally being here. They're locked in. And I'm going to say this. Everyone's been on lockdown, right? They've been where they're at. They haven't been able to leave. There's going to be some excitement and energy from the road teams today because they're excited to get out and be somewhere different. Give me the Nittany Lions, and I like it at minus 5.5 too. So I think Nittany Lions, and I also think they cover the spread.
No Journey Brown for Penn State, but Noah Cain and Devin Ford should fill in nicely for Penn State. I think this is a competitive game, but I still believe in James Franklin and company. 11 wins in 3 of their last 4 seasons. I think they continue with that winning mark today. They get the win, and they cover against Indiana. So 2 more games to get to, and they kick off in just about 30 seconds probably. Rutgers and Michigan State, the battle of the new kind of head coaches. Mel Tucker in his first year 0, with the Spartans. Greg Schiano, his second time returning to Piscataway. Michigan State, a 9-point favorite, the over-under total 45. George, what do you like?
This is a tough one for Michigan State fans because if you win, good for you. If you lose, it looks terrible. But give me Michigan State because Rutgers was literally the worst offense and defense in the Big Ten last year. Full Big Ten schedule is not going to help them. I think they get 1 win this year, hopefully, maybe 2. But give me Michigan State. Give me Mel Tucker because they still actually returned a few guys from that team last year. And they were still able to win games with as bad as Mark D'Antonio was in his last season.
Rutgers will improve. Greg Schiano can recruit. He has hit the transfer market, even some guys with Big Ten experience. It will not happen this year. Michigan State wins. They rely on the ground game. They rely on still a strong defense. I think they win and they cover. I would maybe lead the under, but still, I'm just going to say cover of the 9-point spread. This is where we would have checked in with Matt Sheehan and Will Hunter of Locked On Spartans for a fireball check. They are both being proud papas. Matt Sheehan just had a newborn earlier this week. Will back in May. And the baby hot take machine in Elias Hunter, he is taking care of him today. So shout out to those 2 new dads as we get ready for Big Ten football season. Let's finish the Locked On Big Ten Game Day live show with the game on Fox right now. Big noon kickoff, Nebraska and Ohio State. The Buckeyes, a 27-point favorite. The over-under total 68. George, what do we like?
Give me the under, and that spread's not enough. Ohio State wins by more than 27. I'm excited to see Justin Fields in this one because, like we said, he's only going to get better. 40 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns. I still can't believe that number, but here's a guy that I'm excited to see happen. Trey Sermon, the graduate transfer from Oklahoma. That's over 2,000 yards and 25 touchdowns he brings from Norman. They miss him this year. And what I love about Trey Sermon, the last name Sermon, Toby Rowland, the awesome play-by-play voice for the Sooners. Whenever he'd score, the minister, preach! That's going to happen a lot this year in Columbus. And as they lose J.K. Dobbins, they get another stud at running back, and everyone in the Big Ten is going to hate to see it. Give me Ohio State playing like a team possessed, a team pissed off, a team motivated, above all, a team focused, led by the second-best quarterback in the country.
You say Trey Sermon, the Oklahoma grad transfer, who will no doubt be a factor in that backfield, but they also get back Master Teague, 789 rushing yards last year and 4 touchdowns. I do believe the Huskers offense does enough with Adrian Martinez, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Dedrick Mills to keep pace. Maybe not so much with the actual game, but the spread. I think the Huskers cover, and in that case, I would lean the over. It could be like 51-28, and we would hit both of them. So I think the Huskers cover, because good teams win and great teams cover, and the over of that 68-point total. George Bolecki, a sports reporter and anchor in Madison, Wisconsin at NBC 15. I am Ben Stevens, the host of Locked On Big Ten. This has been the first ever Locked On Big Ten Game Day live show, getting you set for the opening Saturday of Big Ten football. 6 matchups starting right now at noon, going all the way until about 11 p.m. Eastern tonight when the Little Brown Jug and Maryland Northwestern wrap up. George, this was a ton of fun. I think we made Big Ten fans smarter today.
I hope we did. We definitely made ourselves smarter, and we learned from them too. It's back. Big Ten football is back. Game Day's back. College football is officially back as a Power 5. One of the best conferences in Power 5 is back today. That's what I love to see.
Everybody, enjoy some Big Ten football. Have a